Hands on the wheel. Stay right there.
I'm trying. I'm not feeling good.
Yeah, I hear you. Hands on the wheel. Don't reach.
It's I'm dizzy. I got a condition.
Not now. Look at me. License on you?
Yeah. I think back pocket.
Don't go digging. We'll get to it. Step out for me.
Keep your hands on the wheel for me. License and registration.
Yeah. I'm trying to. Hang on.
Stop. Hands where I can see them.
I'm sick, man.
We'll talk about that in a second. Step out of the car.
Okay. All right.
Slow. Watch your footing.
I'm not trying to do
hands
anything.
Hands up. Don't move. Turn around. Hands behind your back.
Please.
Now. Let's go.
Officer Miller was 100% certain the kid in the blue Honda was drunk. He saw the erratic lane change. He saw the driver's head drooping. And when he walked up to the window, he saw the shaking hands. Miller was already writing the DUI report in his head before he even opened the door. But Miller was wrong. The driver wasn't intoxicated. He wasn't high. He was in the middle of a catastrophic medical emergency. And Officer Miller was about to make a decision, a split-second choice to ignore the evidence right in front of his face. That wouldn't just cost him his badge. It would expose a corruption ring so deep it would dismantle the entire department. If stories about real police accountability matter to you, hit that like button now. Because what happens next will change how you see every traffic stop. In the Oak Creek precinct, Officer Miller didn't patrol to keep the peace. He patrolled to hunt. He had been on the force for 7 years, and his superiors called him proactive. But the locals? They called him a shark. Miller didn't wait for dispatch to call him. He went out and manufactured his own stats using Pretext stops. On this particular Tuesday, the air was thick with humidity. It was past 11:30 p.m. The university library had just closed, and the streets were quiet. Miller was parked in a cutout, lights off, watching the intersection. He wasn't interested in speeders. Speeding tickets don't get you promoted. He was looking for indicators. The hesitation at a green light. The tire touching the white line. The brake light that flickered a fraction of a second too long. But Miller's indicators were broken. They were filtered through a heavy layer of bias. If he saw a luxury SUV drift, he assumed it was a tired dad or an overworked executive. If he saw an older sedan with a dented bumper do the exact same thing, he saw a criminal. And if the driver inside that sedan happened to be young and black, Miller's mind was made up before he even put the cruiser in drive. That's when Andre Williams turned onto the main road. Andre was 22, a senior civil engineering student, and a track athlete. The car was a clean Honda Accord. Registration current. Taillights working. To anyone else, it was just traffic. To Miller, it was prey. He watched the car pass and noted the driver's silhouette. Stiff. Leaning forward. In Miller's playbook, that posture meant the driver was fighting to keep the world from spinning. Miller pulled out and began the pace. This is a tactic where an officer rides your bumper, flooding your interior with high beams, waiting for you to get nervous and make a mistake. He was applying pressure, waiting for the crack. Andre didn't speed up. He slowed down. To Miller, slowing down was just as suspicious as speeding. It was overcorrection. It was the sign of a guilty conscience. He flipped the switch. The blue and red strobes exploded into the darkness. Miller thought he had a drunk college kid coming home from a rager. He thought he was about to rack up another DUI arrest to pad his monthly stats. He had no idea that the young man in the car wasn't drunk. He wasn't high. He was dying. Inside the blue Honda, the world was dissolving. Andre Williams was fighting a war inside his own body. He was a type 1 diabetic. Most people think diabetes is just about avoiding sugar. They don't understand the violence of a severe hypoglycemic event. It's not just hunger. It is a system-wide shutdown. 30 minutes earlier, Andre had been in the engineering lab. He'd taken his basal insulin, the background dose that keeps a diabetic stable, but he'd lost track of time and skipped dinner to finish a bridge simulation. Now, his blood glucose was dropping past 60 milligrams per deciliter. At that level, the brain begins to starve. The glucose fuel it needs to process reality simply vanishes. Andre felt the cold sweat first, a clammy, sticky layer on his skin, distinct from the humidity outside. Then the tremors hit. His hands, usually steady enough to draw complex blueprints, began to vibrate uncontrollably. He gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. That was the stiffness Officer Miller had seen. It wasn't intoxication. It was a desperate attempt to keep a 2-ton vehicle on the road while his nervous system misfired. 55. 50. At 50, the vision goes. The edges of Andre's sight began to blur, like a camera lens twisting out of focus. The streetlights smeared into long, glowing streaks. The road ahead looked like a tunnel closing in. Andre knew what was happening. He'd lived with this since he was 12. He reached for the passenger seat where he usually kept a roll of glucose tabs or a juice box. His hand hit empty leather. He had finished the juice box yesterday and forgotten to restock. Panic set in. Real, primal panic. His brain, starved of glucose, switched into survival mode. Logic disappeared. Instinct took over. Get home. Get to the fridge. When the police lights flashed in his rearview mirror, Andre's brain couldn't process them as law enforcement. They were just bright, aggressive pains in his eyes. He pulled over because muscle memory told him to, but his coordination was gone. He didn't put the car in park immediately. He let it roll a few inches. He fumbled with the gear shift. To Officer Miller, watching from behind, this clumsy parking job was the confirmation he needed. It looked like a driver too wasted to find the brake pedal. Miller stepped out of his cruiser, adjusting his belt, touching his holster. He walked toward the Honda with command presence, a stance designed to intimidate. He didn't see a medical emergency. He didn't see a young man fighting for consciousness. He saw a suspect. The window didn't come down. Andre was staring at the button, but his finger wouldn't obey his brain. He pressed the lock. Then the window lock. Finally, the glass slid down. Miller didn't ask a polite question. He shone his flashlight directly into Andre's eyes. The beam was blinding. Andre flinched, raising a hand to shield his face. The movement was jerky and erratic. Miller began shouting immediately, demanding hands on the wheel, his voice escalating to combat level. Andre froze. The shouting sounded distant, like it was coming from underwater. He was breathing hard now, short, gasping breaths. This is called Kussmaul breathing. It's the body's desperate attempt to expel acid from the blood. To a doctor, it's a siren screaming diabetic ketoacidosis. To Officer Miller, it was panting. It was the sign of someone high on stimulants. Miller demanded license and registration. Andre tried to speak. He wanted to say, diabetic, juice. But his tongue felt thick, swollen to twice its size. He managed only a few slurred, unintelligible mumbles. This is the moment where training fails, or rather, where the lack of training becomes a weapon. Miller heard slurred speech and assumed alcohol. He saw glassy eyes and assumed drugs. He didn't pause to smell the air inside the car. If he had, he would have smelled a sweet, fruity scent, like acetone or rotting apples, the biological hallmark of a sugar crash. But Miller didn't care about the smell. He opened the door and ripped Andre out of the vehicle. Andre couldn't resist. His legs were jelly. When Miller pulled him, Andre simply collapsed, his knees hitting the asphalt hard. To the dashcam, it looked like a stumble. To Miller, it was non-compliance. He spun Andre around, slamming him against the side of the car. The impact knocked the wind out of him. Miller screamed, "Stop resisting," for the microphone, creating a narrative of conflict where none existed. He twisted Andre's wrists behind his back. He applied the handcuffs tight. The metal bit into the bone. And there, gleaming in the harsh light of the street lamps, was the evidence. On Andre's left wrist, right next to the handcuff, was a silver bracelet. It wasn't jewelry. It was a medical alert tag. It had the red medical symbol clearly engraved on it. Miller looked at it. We know he looked at it because the bodycam footage shows his head tilt down. It shows his flashlight beam linger on the word diabetic for exactly 2 seconds. This was the turning point. This was the moment Miller could have saved his career. He could have called an ambulance. He could have been a hero. But Miller didn't want to be wrong. Admitting he had just assaulted a sick student would mean paperwork. It would mean an internal review. So he made a choice. He reached down and pulled the sleeve of Andre's sweatshirt over the bracelet. He covered it up. He chose the lie. If this makes you angry, hit that subscribe button. Because it gets worse. The ride to the precinct was a blur of nausea and darkness for Andre. Miller drove with the windows up, rehearsing his report, layering the lies. When they arrived, Andre had to be dragged through booking. Miller joked with the desk sergeant about another lightweight kid. They didn't call a nurse. They didn't check vitals. They threw him into cell number 4. They took his shoelaces. They took his belt. And, crucially, they took his phone. Andre's phone was sitting in the property bag, buzzing. It was vibrating with alerts from his continuous glucose monitor, CGM, linked to a sensor on his arm. Critical low. Seizure risk imminent. The phone buzzed and buzzed in the plastic bag, screaming for help in a digital language no one was bothering to read. Inside the cell, Andre curled up on the cold concrete. His liver was dumping whatever meager stores of glycogen it had left, but it wasn't enough. He was dying on the floor of a police station, 20 feet away from a vending machine full of soda that could have saved his life. But Officer Miller had made a massive miscalculation. He assumed Andre was just another anonymous kid who would plead out to a DUI to avoid trouble. He didn't know that Andre's father was David Williams. And David Williams wasn't just a concerned parent. He was a retired federal prosecutor who had spent 20 years putting away organized crime figures. David Williams knew the law. He also knew his son's biology. When Andre didn't come home, David checked the shared app on his phone that tracked Andre's blood sugar. His heart stopped. The line on the graph had fallen off a cliff. The last reading was 40 minutes ago. The GPS location, the Oak Creek Police Precinct. David didn't call. He drove. At 1:45 a.m., he walked into the precinct not as a panicked father, but as a shark entering a kiddie pool. He approached the desk sergeant with a deadly, vibrating calm. He held up his phone, showing the red line of the glucose graph. "My son is in a critical hypoglycemic state," David said, his voice low and dangerous. "You have exactly 30 seconds to let me see him and get him medical attention before I bring the entire weight of the Department of Justice down on this building." The sergeant blinked, stammering that the suspect was processing. David roared. His composure cracked. "He is not drunk. He is dying." Miller came out of the back, looking annoyed. David stepped into Miller's personal space. "Did you check his wrist? Did you check his wallet? Or did you just see a black kid in a nice car and decide to ruin his night?" Miller sneered. He was resisting. Erratic behavior. "Open the cell," David commanded. When they opened cell number 4, Andre wasn't moving. He was gray. The paramedics arrived 3 minutes later and pushed pure dextrose directly into Andre's vein. It took 10 agonizing minutes for David to see his son's eyes flutter open. Miller stood in the doorway watching. For the first time, the arrogance was gone. He looked at David Williams, who was staring back with a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. Miller realized the hunt was over. He was the prey. The department tried to fix it. They dropped the charges the next morning, citing new medical evidence. They hoped David would take his son and go home. Instead, David filed a lawsuit within 48 hours. He didn't just sue for wrongful arrest. He sued for deprivation of civil rights under color of law. Then came the discovery phase. This is where the police have to turn over their records. David's legal team demanded everything. Bodycam, radio logs, and the internal text messages between officers. The department fought to keep the texts private. The judge disagreed. When the texts came out, they didn't show negligence. They showed malice. They found a group chat named the Wolfpack. It included Miller and 3 other officers. The messages were a horrifying window into their mindset. There were texts from Miller weeks prior, bragging about easy pickings and targeting drivers who couldn't afford lawyers. There were messages from the night of the arrest boasting about bagging a student and teaching him respect. But the smoking gun was the forensic video analysis. David's team slowed down the Bodycam footage frame by frame. Frame 402, Miller looks at the bracelet. Frame 405, recognition. Frame 408, he pulls the sleeve down. It wasn't a mistake. It was a cover-up. The city's lawyers took one look at the video and the Wolfpack texts, and they pulled out the checkbook. They knew a jury would destroy them. The settlement was historic, $4 million. But the money was just the beginning. The settlement required the release of Miller's disciplinary record. Andre wasn't the first. There had been 12 previous complaints against Miller for similar behavior, profiling, aggression, ignoring facts. All 12 had been buried by the chief. The police chief was forced to resign for ignoring the pattern. And Miller? He didn't just lose his job. The video of him covering the medical bracelet went viral. He became unhireable in law enforcement anywhere in the country. He was stripped of his qualified immunity in the civil suit, leaving him personally liable for a portion of the damages. He lost his house. He lost his pension. Have you ever been dismissed by someone in authority when you tried to explain something important? Drop your story in the comments. And if you want to see more cases where we expose these patterns, like and subscribe right now. Andre Williams graduated the following year. He walked across the stage with his degree in one hand and his insulin pump in the other. He didn't let the trauma break him. He used it. He's now working on civil engineering projects to improve urban infrastructure in underserved communities. This story isn't just about one bad cop. It's about the danger of assumptions. Officer Miller looked at a young man and saw a criminal because that's what he wanted to see. He was willing to let a human being die rather than admit he was wrong. We have to ask, how many other Andres are sitting in holding cells right now? How many medical emergencies are being treated as crimes? Andre survived because he had a father who knew the system and technology that told the truth. But justice shouldn't depend on who your father is. It shouldn't depend on an app. If you believe in real accountability and want to see more stories where the truth actually wins, hit that subscribe button. We are building a community that demands better. Thanks for watching.